Sir Tony Blair has criticised Sir Keir Starmer's net zero initiative, saying they are doomed to fail.
The former Prime Minister has called for a fundamental overhaul of environmental policies, saying it is unjust for individuals to be expected to make financial sacrifices and lifestyle adjustments when they are aware that their effect on global emissions is minimal. Environment Secretary Steve Reid joins us now. We'll ask you in a moment about whether a former Labour Prime Minister's intervention the day before local elections is useful. But let's talk particularly about something that I reckon voters will be particularly exercised this morning about, and that is fly tipping. You have new proposals. Now, a lot of people getting in touch this morning who are saying, under existing proposals, they're reporting fly tippers to the council or to the police. Nothing's being done. So if things aren't being done now, what's the point in what you're suggesting?
Well, we're making these suggestions because things have to change. The reason we've seen this epidemic of fly tipping is because it increased by over a third under the previous Conservative government. And people are quite rightly furious when they see their communities buried under an avalanche of rubbish and waste. You know, you see mattresses, you see old sofas, you see abandoned fridges just dumped on streets. And because the people doing it get away with it, that's why more and more of it goes on. So as part of our plan for change, we are determined to clean up Britain. So we want councils to get much more aggressive with new tactics, such as using the kind of new technologies that we're seeing with drones to hunt down the people that are doing the fly tipping so we can seize their vehicles and crush them. That is a punishment for those operators that are getting involved in this kind of behaviour. It is a deterrent to other people who are thinking of doing the same thing.
It sounds incredible, drones flying around, spotting fly tippers and then councils moving in. But councils already have the power to seize fly tippers' vehicles. 88% don't use them. I'm not sure if that's because it's too expensive. So are you bringing in, with your drones, pots of money for councils to use?
Yeah, well, a couple of things there, Susanna. First of all, we have increased councils' funding by just under 7%, which is billions pounds more for councils, and we want them to use some of that to tackle the fly tipping epidemic. But another barrier that we're removing now is that it's councils using taxpayers' money who have had to pay for the cost of storing those vehicles until they can be crushed or otherwise disposed of. We are going to make the fly tippers pay for those costs instead, so the costs no longer fall on the council taxpayer. That makes it much easier for councils to take this action without having to incur a huge cost. And as a further deterrent, we're looking to change the law so that we increase the maximum sentence to 5 years in prison. We know that a lot of organised criminal gangs have now got into this sector because it's so easy for them to make money charging a householder 50 quid or whatever it might be to take away their household rubbish, drive round the corner and dump it on a nearby road. Because the licensing regime is inadequate, because the punishments are inadequate, they get away with it. Not anymore. We're going to put a stop to it with these tough new measures.
Thank you. Can I turn to climate change? And you are the Environment Secretary, so of course you take an interest in this. Two different reports out. The Independent Advisory Climate Change Committee is warning that the government is not preparing for tomorrow's disaster of floods, heat waves, droughts and wildfires. They're saying that you are failing to deliver the change in approach which is needed. You've also got the Tony Blair Institute, which, at least in Tony Blair's forward, seems to be saying that you are behaving in an irrational way and that your proposals are unrealistic and unworkable. So who is right? The Independent Climate Change Committee, that you need to do more, or Tony Blair, that your plans are just going to fail?
Two different but related issues there that you're raising, Ed. First of all, on flooding, we inherited from the previous government flood defences in the worst condition they'd been in on record because of a lack of maintenance. And what we did in the budget last year was increase funding for flood defences, building new and maintaining existing, to a record £2.65 billion over 2 years. That will make a difference, and we'll see, going through the spending review that will be announced in in June how much further we're able to go on fixing the very poor inheritance we got on flooding from the previous government. Talking about the Climate Change Committee, many of the points they're raising related to the situation under the previous government, and we are changing that through the kind of investment that I just talked about. When it comes to the TBI report that Tony Blair wrote the foreword to, we all remember, don't we, the pain of energy bills shooting up in the way that they did a couple of years ago. That happened because we are so dependent on fossil fuels, and the price of that is determined by the global supplies. And when Putin conducted his illegal invasion of Ukraine, he choked off the supply, sent prices rising.
Yeah.
Households and businesses here in the UK were hit
point
very hard by that.
By
shifting,
which is a long-term
I was just going to say, yeah.
The voters,
by shifting to clean power that we generate here at home.
He says voters say they're being asked to make financial sacrifices and changes in lifestyle when they know that their impact on global emissions is minimal. In future, the major sources of pollution will come principally from the developing world. You're not even persuading your own former Prime Minister. I mean, a Labour source says that it's simply a temper tantrum on behalf of Tony Blair, but a lot of voters will agree with him.
Well, I always welcome his contribution to any debate. He has a lot of experience to offer. But 75% of emissions come from fossil fuels. And as I say, if we can take back control of our own energy here at home by changing the planning rules as we're doing so that we can more quickly develop alternative sources of energy, wind, wave, solar and nuclear, then we're not so dependent on the fluctuating global prices of fossil fuels. We can, in the long term, lower the cost to households and businesses and ensure a more secure supply of energy.
All
of those are good things to do, but they also contribute to net zero.
It's always important when politicians give straight answers, and we've got an election tomorrow. You often welcome the contribution Tony Blair makes to policy debates, but in this occasion, you definitely don't welcome him saying your plans are unworkable, do you?
It's given me the chance to come on your show, Ed, and talk about why this government is seeking to take back control of our energy by generating clean power here at home rather than being dependent on fossil fuel dictators like Vladimir Putin. That is a good thing. It's greater security for our country. In the long term, it's lower bills for households, but it also tackles net zero and the climate change
Tony Blair for his
So
forward.
I think it's great that I'm here today to talk about that.
So you're thanking Tony Blair
I wouldn't be here, Ed, if he hadn't written that forward talking to you about it.
You would
I wouldn't be here talking about it if Tony hadn't written that forward.
You were already booked to come on the programme. We didn't invite you on because Sir Tony Blair wrote this forward to this report. He's actually managed to completely change the nature of the conversation for the Labour government this morning.
Quite unhelpfully.
But it's an important debate. You know, people are bothered about the cost of energy. People are bothered about energy security for this country.
Right.
I'm glad that I'm getting the chance to come here and speak about it.
You sound like Mrs. Merton. Let's have a heated debate. Thank you very much indeed, Steve Reid, and good luck in the elections tomorrow.
Thanks, Ed.
Right, shall we see whether people agree with me or Ed on public litter bins? Dave, via email, I'm totally in agreement with Susanna about bins on the street. I pick up litter every morning before 6 o'clock when walking my dogs, and I put the litter in my own bin.
Of course we need more public litter bins. You just don't need to have your personal one outside your house without a police officer to police it.
God, are you Andrew Pearce? Susanna is not saying that. You've totally misrepresented what she is saying.
You can see what he was like as a politician, though, can't you?
I can.
You create a bogus argument that you then attack because you're not able to attack the actual argument.
That's what you just did. The idea that I'm against more public litter bins...
But I'm in favour of public litter bins, and every time I want more litter bins, you say, no, you want a personal one outside your front door with a security guard defending it, which I don't.
Which is ridiculous.
Which would be ridiculous. Thank goodness that's not what I'm arguing. Do we need more public litter bins? 92% say yes, we do. What did you make of the interviews? We had the Environment Secretary, Steve Reid, trying to spin the fact that Tony Blair's intervention was a welcome opportunity to discuss climate change.
Constructive. They will be pulling their hair out in Number 10 today. Absolutely, because this will dominate political discourse today. It will dominate Prime Minister's questions. It's a gift for Kemi Baynott, who's been a long-term critic of the Dash to Net Zero. And remember, the Spanish government, we now know, was warned 2 months ago by their national grid operator there was a big risk of major power failures because of the reliance on renewables. It's there, in black and white.
But the fault here isn't the fact they generate their power from wind and solar. It's they haven't got the wires and the transmission systems. Now, we have that in Britain too, problems, as we saw with the Heathrow fire. But I fear I might die laughing when Steve Reid, who's worshipped Tony Blair his entire life, is saying, oh, it's an important contribution to the debate. Inside him, we think, well, I can't say what he will be thinking.
Former Prime Ministers, don't you just love them?
Yeah, well, some I do.
And finally, Richard Tice, who was actually laughing about the fact that Tony Blair had taken, it seemed, he claimed a reform side of net zero.
Yeah, but he also knows he can't claim Tony Blair on his side too loudly because the people in his party, the activists, don't like Tony Blair. They disagree with Tony Blair on everything else, so you can't just cherry-pick one issue and say, oh, Blair's great.
And if they do well, and if they do well in these elections, they're going to have to get ready to answer the difficult questions about their policies and how much they cost.
Well, they're not costed.
You gave them a very hard time, quite
every time. Look, it's an anti-migrant party. It's a hard-right anti-migrant party.
They're going to have to
and we don't even know what to do about that.